I said, what I want to use my life for is to work on the world's largest challenges with the most intelligent, most creative, most powerful, most effective people in the world. And I declared what my legacy would be that I'm living into, which is when I get to the end of my life, I will have created a body of work that universally connects all people and creates the conditions for human thriving. So that's what all my work is about. Enter the von Lila Framework, which I wrote in 2015. And at the time, I had been working for Burning Man headquarters. And my title was Cultural Relations Maven. And what I did for the org, I was hired by Marian, who's the CEO and one of the founders. And I worked with her and Larry Harvey and the other founders. I would travel with Larry and Marian mostly and represent the organization with communities all over the world, and discover how, support the teams that were out in the world discovering how the Burning Man organization could support the expansion of this culture that is about generosity, participation, and creativity. And so through that, and through having, I started going to Burning Man when I was 19 in 2000, and I've been 19 times. And so I've had a lot of lived experience of what it takes to build participatory culture. And so that's where the framework came from. This is a framework for stakeholder engagement, and it breaks down into 3 parts. The first part is attitude. And so there's 2 parts of the attitude to hold to create participatory cultures. The first one is curiosity. So when you're holding an attitude of curiosity, first you ask questions of yourself to identify what is it that you want to have in your life. And then you can assess, what is it that I'm available to give? What can I contribute? And then you can look at, what is my duty in this space? What do I have a responsibility towards? As you start to realize what it is that you can give and be empowered in yourself, that you actually do have something to contribute. And I don't really need to say this to this group because we're all so active and like living in that culture of contribution. But for people who are new to it, once they realize that they can contribute something, they can ask questions of others. So those questions would be things like, what do you want to see improved in your community? What are your ideas on how that can happen? What's stopping it or making it not possible for those things to happen? And then most importantly, how can you help in creating that solution? The second element of the framework is inclusion. So holding an attitude of inclusion. And this can be summarized as nothing about us without us. So if you're creating a solution for a community in your town, it doesn't work to create that solution in a silo without talking to the neighborhood people who sit on their stoops or who play in the streets or who are active in the churches. You have to be in conversation with the people for whom the solution's being made. The second part of the framework, and there's 7 elements, by the way, the second part is access. So this is access to physical space and access to information. So the first sentence there says the most important space is a seat at the table. And beyond that, it's important to provide physical spaces or have those be available where people can meet and can have what are called social collisions, where they, we've all probably had that experience where you want to do something, it's floating around in your mind, and then you meet somebody who happens to be the key person to help make that happen. So creating opportunities for that through physical space. And on the topic of a seat at the table, I want to say that I, as somebody who is a speaker, I get invited to participate at events and be on panels. And I've gotten to the point where if there isn't diversity on the panel, I won't participate in the panel, because that's being a stand and a commitment to ensuring, to using my power to ensure that underrepresented voices are given an opportunity to be heard. So the other thing is, we oftentimes, I've heard this many times, and I've sometimes previously said it myself, which is, well, we would love to have diverse speakers, or we'd love to have more people of color at this event, or any people of color at this event, but we just don't know anybody. And we put it out to our network and we do our best. And that phrase of we do our best or we're doing our best doesn't cut it in my book. There has to be behind it a commitment to actually generating diversity. And so that's access to physical space, a seat at the table. Access to information. So not everybody in the world has access to the internet, our infinite source of information, but there are many people working on that. But so it's important to have access to the internet, access to libraries, access to smartphones, to be able to gather information that's needed so that you can generate your solutions. And then very importantly, with access to information, my friend Nancy Giordano, she sums this up very nicely. She says, in order to create a movement, you have to build a caring community and then generate the storytelling tools to give them so that they can go out there and be evangelists for whatever the mission is of that community. Part 3 is about agency. So agency are behaviors that you can embody that will help to foster participation. So number 1 is the simple act of inviting. And inviting, it's amazing how oftentimes, like for those of us who are doers, we'll think that we have everything all set up, and then we just kind of expect people to get involved, or we want them to get involved, or we don't make the request for them to be involved. And so inviting is very simply, would you like to be involved in this? Can you help with this? Can you contribute in this way? How do you see that you can help? Like just simply inviting them. Element 6 of the framework is connecting. So the behavior of building our human network, building relationships. And it says here that connectors facilitate introductions without the need to gain from them. But the footnote there is that if you are being generous in your network and making connections and paying attention for who needs what and then connecting them, you will become valuable within that ecosystem. So it's this really nice way to build your social capital and build your value, but doing it from a place of caring. And lastly, element 7 is translating. So this is really important to be able to, when there's differences, to be able to translate the communication from one party to another. And those differences can be anything from generational differences to cultural differences, language differences, etc. So it's good to develop skills to be able to listen and empathize with what is this person saying and what do they want, and what is this person saying, what do they want, and then be able to facilitate that communication. So that's the framework in a nutshell. Once the new website is up, you can find it at vonlila.com. And if you want to reach me by email, you can do so at getinvolved@vonlila.com.
Oh, I was curious, I was furious about the state of the world. I felt alone, I was living in confusion. Oh, I needed some kind of inclusion. I was out there, I didn't have no access to space, no information. Hey, anybody out there been in this situation? Steps in a framework that can bring heaven on earth. Oh, you got to invite, get people on your wave. Oh, connect them with each other for the direction they crave. Oh, in the language they speak, you got to teach. This is the way to a better day. Oh, 7 elements in the framework bring heaven on earth.